into some colder air ahead of it. We could see some snow over the hills in the far north, maybe even to some lower levels of Caithness and Orkney. But a rain warning is in force for western Scotland, where we could see some very persistent rainfall throughout Monday. Drizzle and cloud across the board, really, further to the south of that. But the rain will eventually arrive across southern districts as we head towards Tuesday and Wednesday. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
How are you? It's 9 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my big opinion, the scandal of Britain's potholes. Dangerous, unsightly and costing motorists millions. My Mark Meets guest is Sean Wilson, the Coronation Street star, famous for playing Martin Platt, Gail's other half, for 20 years. He gave it all up to pursue a career as an award-winning cheesemaker. He tells his amazing story shortly. In the big story, why is the alleged acid attacker still on the run? Is someone protecting him? Is he dead? As the manhunt continues, we'll seek answers from the former head of Royal Protection, ex-top cop Di Davies. Looking forward to this in my take at 10. It's time for Prince Andrew to remarry Sarah Ferguson. It will save his reputation, lift the nation and reignite a royal love story. Yes, that's my take at 10. It's all about Prince Andrew. You won't want to miss it. 2 hours of big opinion, big debate and big entertainment. And this is your perfect Saturday night in. So crack open a bottle of something cold and bubbly or fire up the kettle because we got work to do. First, the headlines. A good friend of mine, the ever-sober Ray Addison.
Thanks, Mark. Good evening. Our top stories tonight. Stormont's first nationalist First Minister has pledged to work with unionists to build a better future for Northern Ireland. The historic appointment of Sinn Féin's Michelle O'Neill was confirmed as power sharing was restored 2 years after it collapsed. It follows an agreement between the DUP and the government over post-Brexit trade. The DUP's Emma Little-Pengelly has become the new Deputy FM, a role that carries equal legal power. Michelle O'Neill is promising to be inclusive and respectful to all.
We mark a moment of equality and a moment of progress, a new opportunity to work and to grow together. Confident in that wherever we come from, whatever our aspirations are, we can and we must build our future together. I'm really delighted to see every MLA back in this chamber today, and I welcome the fact that the DUP have decided to re-enter the democratic institutions and that the outcome of last year's Assembly election is now being respected.
Police hunting for a suspected chemical attacker have released new video of a home in Newcastle being searched. 2 containers with potential corrosives were recovered. Warnings can be seen on the labels, and tests are now ongoing to see if they held the same substance used during an attack in South London. Abdul Ezedi hasn't been seen since an image of him was taken at King's Cross Station on Wednesday night. A 31-year-old mother remains in hospital with injuries that are believed to be life-changing. Her 2 young daughters were also hurt, but not as badly as first thought. Scotland Yard say that more than 10,000 pro-Palestine supporters have marched through central London earlier on today. Members of the Stop the War Coalition and Palestine Solidarity campaign called for an end to the Israel-Hamas conflict. 1 woman was arrested on suspicion of setting off a smoke bomb or flare. These protesters explained to us their demands.
People need to support Palestine and stop what's going on because day to day, every day, more and more horrific sights are seen.
The people are talking and governments need to listen, not only the UK. All governments need to listen because the people have spoken.
We are all humans. We all should feel each other. We shouldn't be, Gaza shouldn't be like that. People shouldn't be killed and slaughtered like that. So I'm praying for a better world, a peaceful world.
And the train drivers' strike has affected parts of the country again. Members of ASLEF at Avanti West Coast, East Midlands Railway and West Midlands Railway have been staging a 24-hour walkout over pay and conditions. The action started earlier on this week and will continue on Monday, while a ban on overtime will last until Tuesday. ASLEF says that drivers have not had a pay rise for almost 5 years. Meanwhile, the government is urging the union to accept an offer that they made last year. Well, for the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen right now, or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now let's get back to Mark.
My thanks to Ray Addison, who returns in an hour's time. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight, your perfect Saturday night in. In my big opinion, the scandal of Britain's potholes. Dangerous, unsightly and costing motorists millions. In the big story, why is the alleged acid attacker still on the run? Is someone protecting him? Is he dead? As the manhunt continues, we'll seek answers from a former top cop and ex-head of Royal Protection, Di Davies. My Mark Meets guest is a massive name. It's Sean Wilson, the Coronation Street star, famous for playing Martin Platt, Gail's other half, for 20 years. Well, he gave it all up to pursue a career as chef and award-winning cheesemaker. He tells his incredible story shortly. Looking forward to this in my take at 10. In my opinion, it's time for Prince Andrew to remarry Sarah Ferguson. It will save his reputation, lift the nation and reignite a royal love story. Speaking of the royals, with the chilling news that Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Harry and Meghan, are to make more Netflix TV shows, we'll get reaction from the Queen of US royal reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Plus, we'll find out what Prince Philip's nickname for Meghan Markle was. We've got tomorrow's front pages at 10:30 sharp with 3 top pundits who haven't been told what to say and who don't follow the script. Tonight, legendary actor and television personality Christopher Biggins, former Conservative MP and farmer Neil Parish, and author and broadcaster Dr. Lisa McKenzie. Has feminism been good or bad for women? And for men, for that matter? I'll be asking my top pundits and the iconic former government minister and broadcaster Edwina Currie. Plus, the most important part of the show, your emails. They come straight to my laptop, mark@gbnews.com. And this show has a golden rule. We don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. A big 2 hours to come, and we start with my big opinion. What are the signs of a crumbling country with an infrastructure in decline? Chaotic airports in need of refurbishment, a creaking rail network, energy blackouts? Well, in Britain, it's potholes. I love this country and we get a lot of things right, but we have consistently failed to invest in the things which keep the country up and running on a daily basis, like our roads. Right now, driving around parts of Britain is like driving in a third world country. Now, luckily, I don't have a fancy car, but even my poor old Prius, which I think is 14 years old now, gets a bashing on the school run when I go to work or do a big shop at Sainsbury's. Other supermarkets are available. But it's not just our city streets which are like an assault course for the car. God forbid what would happen to my suspension if I took a family holiday and ventured onto a B road. I'd need to replace the Prius with a rally car or a tank. Yes, indeed, the pothole issue is becoming a national joke, with one particular legend, an Essex man by the name of Paul Gibson, who got so sick of an unsightly crater near his house that he and his local community decided to give it a cake and a birthday card to celebrate its 1-year anniversary. And of course, pop superstar Rod Stewart made headlines when filling in a pothole outside his own luxury property. Rod Stewart! Well, you know what they say, the first pothole is the deepest. Now, the state of our road surfaces reflects the wider story of modern Britain. A great infrastructure laid down by the Romans right through to the Victorians, but then left to rot and decay under successive post-war governments. It's the same reason we have inadequate nuclear power, train lines and reservoirs. The potholes on Britain's roads may seem trivial, but represent our culture of complacency, short-termism and neglect. During the war, the Allies had to rebuild bombed roads on an almost daily basis. But in safe modern Britain, it takes years to patch up some of our most important thoroughfares. And patch up is part of the problem. Rather than digging up old roads and starting again with a proper resurfacing, to save money and time, local authorities would rather mend as they go along, which is an endless process that ultimately comes at a far higher price, rather than doing it properly in the first place. Potholes are extremely hazardous for drivers, cyclists and pedestrians, and they're costing drivers millions of pounds a year on tyres, suspension forks, brakes and other bits of the car that I don't even know what they're called. The president of the AA, Edmund King, has said that motorists are being forced to turn to insurers to cover the cost of vehicle damage caused by these potholes, as local authorities increasingly fail to compensate motorists. With breakdown call-outs for pothole damage at a 5-year high, car insurance premiums have in turn risen to record levels. Drivers would be within their rights, of course, to sue local authorities for the damage, but good luck with that. The Telegraph report that between 2019 and 2023, funds paid out to compensate drivers fell by more than half, from £3.7 million to £1.7 million across 85 councils. This is in spite of claims rising 70% in a similar period. Here's the thing. Britain's roads are a part of our way of life. They're part of our history. We need to use them every day. They're the DNA of our economy and how we live. It's a scandal that we don't maintain them properly. Plus, potholed roads look terrible. If we are the 6th biggest economy in the world, and if Brexit Britain is going to punch above its weight and roar on the national stage, then we need beautiful roads that send out a message that Britain is serious about the future and is ready for business. I love this country, but Britain is going to pot holes. There you go. Britain is going to pot holes. This show isn't just thrown together. Your reaction, mark at gbnews.com. We'll get to your emails shortly. Have you got pothole horror stories? Has your car been damaged by a crater in the ground? Let's get reaction from my top pundits. First up, legendary actor and TV personality Christopher Biggins, former Conservative MP and farmer Neil Parish, and author and broadcaster Dr. Lisa Mackenzie. Neil, you're not long out of the House of Commons. This is a sort of issue which voters care a lot about.
Yeah, I mean, I'm told by those who've been doing canvassing that on the doorstep is about, after the health service, is about the next thing that they complain about. And of course, not only is it the potholes, the drainage on our country roads is hopeless. They fill the potholes in with cold tar, literally, and then it comes out again. And so that, I mean, the saga just goes on. And of course, you know, when I used to visit farms, I always said when there was grass in the middle of the road, I knew I was getting closer to the farm. You know, I mean, there are, I mean, admittedly, counties like Devon have as many roads as Belgium, but that doesn't mean to say we shouldn't actually sort them out. So it's the potholes, it's the drainage, and actually doing a proper job, as you said, not just filling with cold tar that very often comes out very quickly. Also, that when they go round filling them, they'll fill one or two, and then they'll leave others. And if the locals say, well, why don't you fill those while you're here? They'll say, oh, well, because on our order sheet, we can only fill X, Y, and Z. Even our own daughter the other morning, she drives early to school. She's a teacher. She bust her tyre in a pothole in our village. I mean, not only can you break the tyre, very often you break the wheel, and sometimes the suspension, because I mean, some of these potholes, not exaggerating, you can nearly bury a car in them. And so, you know, that's the issue. They've got to be done better.
Couldn't agree more. Lisa Mackenzie, a great country should have great roads.
Yes, a great country should have great roads and a great health service and a great criminal justice system and a great, you know, it should be great. But unfortunately, we haven't got any of those at the moment. And I think the pothole issue, it may seem, you know, you start to think about what's happening in the NHS or the criminal justice system, and you think, why are people so angry about potholes? And it is because it represents things just going wrong and not being looked after. I mean, my dad in Nottinghamshire, you know, this is his top issue. And whenever I phone him up, whatever we're talking about, he'll go, yeah, what about them potholes? So it's a big issue all the time. It just says to people, they don't care. That's what it says.
Yes, indeed. Biggins, I really love this country. I know you do as well. I don't like talking it down, but we don't have enough reservoirs. We've got a creaking rail infrastructure that doesn't transport enough people to where they want to go. It's expensive as well. We've got an energy crisis. We're not energy independent. And we've got potholes in the road. We are in the grip of short-termism in this country, aren't we?
We certainly are. I mean, I'm a motorist, as I think probably all panel are motorists.
Yes, yeah.
And we pay a lot of money to be a motorist. It's not easy. It's not free. It's not in any way. I mean, I've got an electric car now. I'm trying to do my bit. But you take the car in fear onto the roads now. And it costs a fortune to have a new tyre. And I think we should all refuse to pay anything to the government that deals with our cars. We should say, no, until you put the roads right, then we'll pay.
There you go. Legendary actor and TV personality Christopher Biggins, former Tory MP and farmer Neil Parish, and author and broadcaster Dr. Lisa Mackenzie return shortly. But next up in the big story, why is the alleged acid attacker still on the run? Is someone protecting him? Is he dead? As the manhunt continues, we'll seek answers from an ex-top cop and former head of Royal Protection, Di Davies. Where is this guy? We'll find out next.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, a big reaction to my big opinion. The state of potholes in this country is a national scandal, a national embarrassment. David has emailed in, hi Mark, I live in County Down. The state of the roads are appalling. I believe that I would have a smoother drive through the fields, says David. That's damning, isn't it? Alan says, local A road resurfaced 9 months ago. Already dug up to lay cables and now potholes appearing daily. Shoddy planning and quality of tarmac. How about this from Mike? I don't recognise the bleak picture that you paint of potholes when it comes to Coventry. Mike, I'm really pleased to hear that Coventry's got good roads. I was in Coventry recently and let me tell you that that city is on the march. I always felt like perhaps it was in a little bit the shadow of Birmingham, but there's so much happening in Coventry now. It's very much the place to be. So pleased to hear that, Mike. David says, Mark, my neighbour hit our new local pothole and his electric car caught fire when he went to charge it that night. Damaged battery cell is thought likely. My car just suffered a damaged wheel. It's diesel, so did not catch fire. David, very, very worrying indeed. Glenda, finally, says, Mark, I agree our roads are a disgrace, but it's either a case of repairing our roads or accommodating illegal migrants in hotels. And those illegal migrants are winning, says Glenda. Keep those emails coming, mark@gbnews.com. But it's time now for the big story, and the man suspected of an acid attack which injured 12 people, including a mother and 2 children, is still at large. Police have searched 5 properties as they hunt for Clapham chemical attack suspect Abdul Ezedi, with body cam footage showing officers entering a home in Newcastle where empty containers with corrosive warnings were found. So why are the police having such trouble tracking this guy down, and how worried should the public be? Well, let's speak to a former top cop and ex-head of Royal Protection, Di Davies. Di, lovely to have you back on the show. This character was last seen at King's Cross Underground Station at 9 p.m. on Wednesday. He jumped on a tube train, has not been seen since. Where could he be?
Well, it's a question I'm sure the police themselves are asking, and I'm sure they're doing everything humbly possible that they can do. What is interesting to me, what is his real character? Was he in the military in the Afghanistan? You know, what are we dealing with here? Because quite clearly, for 4 days now, he has eluded the police. And I'm not so sure that he did go up north. I suspect he probably is somewhere around in London. There's a huge ethnic population, many Afghanistans now. Is he somewhere with them? I don't know, but I know they're liaising with various police forces, or I suspect they are. And quite clearly, we need to know a little bit more about his antecedents. That's crucial, as indeed it is the fact that he hasn't been seen on any CCTV in London, which is more covered than anywhere else in the world, allegedly. So there are huge questions operationally. But as I say, I'd like to go back and investigate who actually is he? What was the relationship with this woman? Where's his telephone? Has he got a telephone? They could gather a huge amount of data, which actually pinpoint possibly where he is. And I'm sure they're doing everything, because this is now being, I would imagine, delegated to a major incident team or a homicide team, because I would treat this as attempted homicide. No ifs, no buts. And you'd put that kind of resources into getting this highly dangerous man in custody.
And of course, this man, these are just at the moment allegations of this attack, but we do know that he's a convicted sex offender. So whatever way you look at it, the guy is a danger to the public.
Well, it would appear so. And as you say, these are allegations, but I'll put my money that he did do it. The evidence, as far as I'm concerned, and we always pussyfoot around saying allegedly, I think he did it. No ifs, no buts. And I think we have to treat this man as a lunatic who is extremely dangerous. What his motive was for this, clearly there was some disturbance. Clearly, it's now alleged that he actually knew the woman, and so there must have been some kind of issue going on between them. Clearly, he and possibly this young woman or a woman and her children were living in a kind of hostel, which is for those who've either come here or are displaced. So there are huge questions, and a number of agencies, I hope, that are giving valuable information as to the motive, the whereabouts, and everything else the police should be looking for.
Well, most definitely. What helps is that he has a very identifiable feature around his eye. He's got some kind of scar, a facial disfigurement, which ought to show up on CCTV. Can we be sure, Di Davies, that he's still alive?
Well, no, as always in any investigation, you keep an open mind. And clearly it's indicative in one sense, either he's been well hidden or he's hidden himself. And that's why it's so important to know his antecedents. Yeah. Until you know exactly what you're dealing with, it's speculation. Because if he's ex-forces, special forces or others, as he may be, having lived and worked in Afghanistan, you could be dealing with an equally. What do we know about his record in Afghanistan? There are so many questions that nobody's probed, or as far as I know, they haven't probed, but it is essential if we're going to catch him.
Indeed, and of course, if he's ex-military, that makes him more of a physical threat as well. He'll have a skill set that an ordinary person like I would not possess. Di, how did it come to pass that this man who was convicted of a sexual assault remained in the country and was ultimately granted asylum?
Well, I think a number of politicians, left and right, as I understand it, are asking the same question. I mean, clearly, there's something horribly wrong. Twice, as I understand it, he was rejected. And on the say-so of one alleged priest or vicar, whoever sits on these tribunals decided he could be, because he said he was now a Christian. And you can't invoke his human rights. Well, something is horribly wrong when we allow people with criminal convictions, and we don't know what convictions, if any, did he have in his home country. And again, that shows a huge loophole in our whole structure. It is broken. It needs to be fixed, in my opinion. Something is chronically wrong with those governing us at the moment, and indeed those in the judiciary and the asylum system, which allow these people to remain in our country. We've got enough bad people of our own. We don't need to import any more.
Di Davies, always a privilege to have you on the show. Catch up soon. My thanks there to former head of Royal Protection, Di Davies. Now, coming up, I'll be asking my top pundits, has feminism been good or bad for women and men for that matter? And are men now worse off in modern society? I'll be asking former government minister Edwina Currie, plus my pundits. That's next.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together. For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 till 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You will not want to miss my take at 10 in just half an hour's time. I'll dealing with Prince Andrew. It's my view that Prince Andrew should remarry Sarah Ferguson. It will save his reputation, it will lift the nation and rekindle a royal romance. That's my take at 10. Fergie and Andy need to tie the knot. I'll explain why, and I'm sure you'll agree. But first, let's go back to your emails. Why is this alleged acid attacker still on the run? Absolutely appalled by this cowardly attack, says Carl on email. This attack on a defenceless mother and a child. I really hope they catch him soon and throw the book at him and deport him, says Carl. Good evening, Mark, says Les. Please have a look at this report below. Les has sent me a report suggesting that chemical attacks are now commonplace in Newcastle, which is a real worry. Andrew says, hi, Mark and team. Maybe this guy is travelling in a burqa. It has been known. Sue says, hi, Mark, it's quite unbelievable that this guy managed to get away with so many cameras in London. Can you imagine with those burns on his face? Nobody took notice. I hope he's not still alive. Save us a lot of money. He should have been deported, and those who let him stay should be held accountable. Strong opinions, keep them coming. Mark at gbnews.com. Now, 16% of men aged 16 to 29 say that feminism has done more harm to society than good, compared with 9% of women. A survey of almost 4,000 people for Ipsos UK for King's College found that in the younger age group, 46% of women thought the movement had had a positive impact, while only 36% of men agreed. So has feminism been good or bad for women, and men for that matter? Are men now worse off in modern society? Let's get the views of former government minister, broadcaster and author Edwina Currie. Edwina, great to see you. First of all, can I ask you, are you a feminist?
No, I'm not a feminist. I have never been a feminist. Last time I said this at the Oxford Union, Mark, the self-proclaimed feminist speaker walked out. She was so upset. So how can I said, well, I'm not a feminist, but I've been a successful woman. And I have used the opportunities that were presented to me. Instead of moaning about how I was being kept down, I used the opportunities and presented myself, and I managed to make a success of things. And it seems to me that that's actually a much better way forward than moaning that other people are keeping you in your place. I mean, I look at you, Mark. I look at you and I see a tall, handsome, highly intelligent, vegetarian, skinny person. A person. I hate the idea of dividing the world up into male and female, or, you know, older and younger, or anything like that. It seems to me that we should see all of us should see each other as people, and try and treat each other with due respect. But I can well understand that a lot of young men, particularly the youngest, teenage, find that feminism has put them at a disadvantage. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe they have to work harder to win the respect of all of us and to win their place in society. But I can well see that they may feel very much pushed out by girl power, giving women, young women especially, the feeling that they can do almost anything.
Well, yes, and men are being demonised, aren't they, with terms like toxic masculinity just for being a bloke?
Well, that's absolutely right. And of course, for some men, it suits them fine, and they make, you know, millions on YouTube being toxic masculine idiots. And hopefully, when they actually cross a line, we can arrest them and treat them as the criminals that I think some of these people actually are. You know who I'm talking about.
Of course.
But for most men, whereas I think in previous generations, men were expected to be the breadwinners, and women were the homemakers, and both those roles attracted a great deal of very positive vibes. Now we see everybody wanting to be the same, and I think that can be a problem. For young men, they just can't guarantee the places in university or the places at the top in management that they used to have, and they may well find themselves with a rather difficult, strident female telling them what to do and really mocking them. Now, you know, if the mockery was the other way around, we'd end up with a tribunal. But when the mockery is coming from, oh, I can see who you've got up there.
That might be who you were talking about.
Awful.
Andrew Tate.
But when the mockery is coming from a strident woman, it can be much harder to counteract in any way that, well, doesn't cause you a lot of trouble. It's just not a great situation at the moment, and I would much prefer to see greater equality, greater respect, greater challenges and acceptance of challenges. But in the end, you know, we should not be dividing the world up into us and them, or men and women.
I completely agree. Edwina, amen to that. It's the same with race relations, isn't it? The bottom line is that whether you're a black person, of colour, a white person, you are British, and we need to come together as one community. And that really is you know, my credo, 100%. But you talked about strong-willed women. You're one of them. You also served under another, Margaret Thatcher. Many consider her a feminist icon, but others said that she held women around her back. What was your experience of the Iron Lady?
Oh, well, a bit of both. A bit of both. I don't think she herself was a feminist. I think she did you know, I tried to copy her. I was going to say much as I did, but of course she did it 20-odd years earlier, in that she looked at the opportunities. She realised that if you worked hard and you were able to present yourself in a strong-minded way, then you could get on in politics. And indeed, when I was elected in 1983, she was the Prime Minister. We only had 23 women in the entire House of Commons. But the women, I think, you know, were pulling far above their weight, because we got a lot more attention. We could actually make something of that. On the other hand, she never promoted any women from the House of Commons into the cabinet. People often call me a cabinet minister. I was never a cabinet minister because nobody like me was ever a cabinet minister when Margaret was in charge. More's the pity.
Too much of a threat. Edwina, let me bring in my top pundits if I can, alongside you. I'm delighted to have Christopher Biggins, Lisa Mackenzie and the brilliant Neil Parish. Lisa Mackenzie, do you think that feminism is still needed?
Well, I think so, yeah. I mean, the last story that we talked about was about a guy who has sexually been done for sexual assault, and now he's thrown acid on a woman. So obviously, these, you know, we still need to be speaking up for women. You know, women are most likely to be harmed by men. You know, the statistics, what you read out was 16% of men 16 to 27 thought that feminism was bad, but 16% is quite low, isn't it? So there's obviously 84% who thinks that it's not. So I still think we should stick up for women. And
stick up for women 100%, but do you wonder, a bit like the Me Too movement in show business, your business, Christopher, that feminism has overcorrected and is now punishing men?
Well, I don't think so, and I think, let's face it, women are very important, and they're very important in my business, I think. And what is disgraceful, that the Oscars have completely ignored Barbie from the point of view that it's a female director, and the star is a female, and the producer is female. And what is ironic is that film has made more money than any other film has ever made in this year and many other years. And what they're ignoring is the fact that these women are hugely successful. Good luck to them. And so we should be praising them. We should be saying, yes, you deserve an Oscar for this, not taking it away. I think it's disgraceful.
Neil Parish, has feminism hurt men?
Well, I think men just need to fight back, don't they? I think there's very many good, strong women out there, very capable. We have them a lot in the House of Commons now. So you've just got to sort of compete. And I think, you know, there was a time when men dominated the world. It's beginning to change, and that's good. I think women do very much need to be protected. But I also think in the workplace now, they really are asserting themselves. And I think, you know, some men do find it quite intimidating. But I've actually always liked strong women. You know exactly where you are with them. They tell you exactly what they think. You may not agree with it, but you can argue with it. And that, I think, is right. And so, therefore, I think, you know, but I think sometimes feminism is sort of overdone when, you know, I like to be polite. I like to open the door. I might stand up for a woman to be able to sit down or whatever. And some will mock you for that. And I think that is silly, because I think at the end of the day, let's also have our, you know, perhaps it may be slightly old-fashioned manners, but we can link that as well. It's about making sure that opportunities for women and same pay and all these things, that's what needs to be concentrated on, I think.
Yes, I mean, the bottom line is that boys, Edwina, are now having worse outcomes at school, and young men at university. Most prison inmates are men. It's men who are the most likely to be the victim of a violent assault, and male suicide is the biggest killer of men under 40. So perhaps men need their own movements.
I'm sure that's absolutely right. And we ought to pay a lot more attention, particularly to young men, teenagers, boys in school. I think a lot of effort went into raising the standards for girls when perhaps it wasn't needed, because, you know, young women always have done very well at school. They've tended to be a lot more mature a little earlier. That's biology. That's not, that's no politics of any kind. But the boys need to be brought on. They need to be encouraged to make sure their literacy and their numeracy is good, that they know the difference, Mark, between an alkali and an acid, which I do wonder. You know, all sorts of things like that. and to be encouraged to take their place in society, to treat people with politeness, which is what Neil was describing, with courtesy and with respect. And it doesn't matter, it seems to me, whether the person you're dealing with or talking to is a man or a woman or a boy or a girl. They're all people.
OK, well, listen, Lisa, only a couple of seconds. You get the last word. Your closing thoughts on this issue?
Yeah, I think Edwina really needs to take her own advice because she's the most unpolite person I've ever met.
Oh, my goodness. Edwina, do you care to defend yourself? Have you both met? Have you met Edwina, Lisa?
Yes, I have, yes, in the Golden Diamond Club in Sutton Ashfield.
When?
Just before Christmas on the Lee Anderson show.
OK, and what happened?
And I was absolutely lovely to everybody. If I wasn't nice to you, there was probably a very good reason.
Yes. You're not a nice person.
Oh, my goodness. Now, listen, what wasn't nice about Edwina? Because we know that Edwina is a very no-nonsense person. Like you, Lisa, she's a woman of substance. Yeah. Perhaps you've just met your match, Lisa.
No, I think we were talking about sugar and the way that sugar is put into food. And she basically inferred that I was
because what I was hearing was that we were being forced to eat sugar by the companies. And I'm afraid I gave Lisa a little look and said, nobody forces you to eat the sugar, Lisa.
Yeah, and then you went on and started to talk to other people about how you didn't want to be cruel to me about my weight. And remember, I'm from Sutton in Ashfield. That didn't go down very well there. They thought you were
Well,
rude.
it may not have done, but it's good advice because in the end, we have to be very responsible for our own health and we need to make sure that we eat sensibly, take exercise, cut down the sugar, don't risk the diabetes.
Be polite.
Because in the end, you want to have a healthy old age like the one I'm enjoying.
Lisa?
Yeah, the only thing I'm going to leave that with is, I got my job through merit.
Edwina, listen, I want you and Lisa to be friends, OK? Because I'm very fond of you, Edwina, and I'm very fond of Lisa. So I want to build bridges here. I want to broker peace. I'm just wondering, would you like to possibly row back on your comments that you made, Edwina, on the Lee Anderson programme? Do you think you were perhaps a little blunt? I can't imagine you wanted to imply that Lisa is overweight. I think you'll agree she's a very beautiful woman.
Pardon me? I didn't actually say anything on the programme.
I see.
I was very careful not to say anything on the programme. And if Lisa is upset or troubled about it, I'm so sad to hear that. I'm so sorry to hear that. But perhaps being rude to me in return just means that she's not thinking about the issues that are being raised in this country and in one or two other countries about how we are responsible for our health. Okay. We are. And if we want to be healthy, we have to sometimes do something about it.
Edwina, you didn't expect that confrontation, but Lisa, apology accepted?
Yes, apology. I'm not a mean-spirited person.
Peace has broken out. Edwina, great to see you again. We'll catch up soon, and thanks to my top pundits as well, at 10 o'clock in just 15 minutes' time. In My Take at 10, it's time for Prince Andrew to marry Sarah Ferguson. It will save his reputation, lift the nation, and reignite a royal love story. Plus, our poll is up. We've been asking, are men now worse off than women in today's society? The results are in. I shall reveal all next. Plus, my Mark Meets guest, Coronation Street star, turned top chef. Find out more after this short intermission.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests, and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Coming up in my Take a 10 in just 15 minutes' time, it's time for Prince Andrew to remarry Sarah Ferguson. It will save his reputation, lift the nation and reignite a royal love story. That is in a quarter of an hour. You won't want to miss it. But first, Mark Meets. Yes, indeed, it's time for Mark Meets and one of the most recognised faces in the country. Sean Wilson played Coronation Street's Martin Platt for 20 years when the ITV soap was at its peak. Here he is in action.
Tomato twice, you love. Has Gail explained the job to you?
Yeah.
Did she explain that it involves work and all?
Well, I'll do anything you tell me to.
Well, listen, my little chuckles, I haven't time to mess about with you. I'm busy. Now, listen, look around, use your nose. Now, get on with it.
In spite of his huge success as an actor, after 2 decades at the top, he swapped the cobbles for cookbooks and artisan cheese in the 1990s. Famous, of course, as the long-suffering husband of Gail, played by Helen Worth, his character also had a romantic clinch with Sally Webster, nurse Rebecca Hopkins, and controversially in 2005, teenager Katie Harris. Unhappy with this edgy and divisive storyline, that's when Sean upped sticks and left the show. Indeed, he went on to leave show business altogether, indulging his great passion, food. Encouraged by a Michelin-starred chef and friend, he got into cheese making. And after 18 months of experimentation, his first cheese won gold at the World Cheese Awards, and the rest is history. Sean's latest project, Jazz Food, combines his 2 great loves, the culinary and musical arts, and it's out now. Well, there was nothing cheesy about his acting, and it's great to see him back on the box. Sean Wilson, back on telly where you belong. Welcome to Mark Dolan tonight. Lovely to see you.
Hello, Mark. Nice to be with you.
Listen, we'll talk about your...
Yeah, really nice to be with you.
We're so good to have you on the show, and I grew up watching you. Brilliant actor, great storylines. We'll get to your career in a moment, but first of all, why the interest in cheese itself?
Well, when I left in 2000 and left TV, I went straight to a glam restaurant, working, looking for my corner, and introduced to a cheese man because it's the science of food that sparks me up. He needed to teach somebody, and then before I knew it, I was in the dairy. He was teaching me how to make Lancashire cheese.
Well, listen, it's been very successful for you, and of course you've got several cookbooks out, including Cheddar Gorged, which is all about the pleasure of cheese. Tell us about your latest book, Sean. It is called Jazz Food.
Well, I wanted to bring a new book to the cookbook readers of this country. I wanted to bring a book that had a great text that was bringing together jazz and food. It's my flight of fancy, Mark, and I'm kind of suggesting that these two are a fusion of two cultures that basically joined in the 1700s and now are, in 2024, accepted art forms. They really enjoying all the through.
That's brilliant.
Together a lovely list.
Sean, we're having absolute hell with your line, I've got to say. I'm really sorry. We're really struggling with your line. I think we're going to have to go and fix it. I'm really sorry about that, but I want to make sure that our viewers and listeners can hear you properly. If we have to, we might have to reschedule the interview because I've got so many questions to ask the big man. But let me tell you that his book is out, and I'm going to give you the details of how to get it shortly. Whilst we're waiting, by the way, we've conducted an exclusive Mark Dolan Tonight People's Poll. We've been asking, are men now worse off than women in today's society? Well, the results are in. 71.5% say yes, whilst 28.5% say no. There you go. Listen, what we'll do, we'll bring our pundits back into the conversation, Maria and Alistair, when you're ready. But let me give you my thoughts about this issue of are men worse off than women in modern society? Well, the issue is that when I was growing up, women were treated very badly. They were second-class citizens. They were paid less than men. There was terrible sexism in the workplace. It continues to this day, but I do wonder whether there's been an overcorrection, and now blokes feel like they've got to apologise for existing. There was that amazing story of the Gillette advert in which they were selling razors to men, but telling men that they were terrible human beings, framing it as toxic masculinity. Outrageous stuff. You reap what you sow. Now, I'm delighted to say that Sean is back with us. Sean, I'm really sorry about the problems with the line. If we can't get through the whole interview, I'd love to have you back. Tell us about your time on Coronation Street. Do you miss it?
No, it's not the same vehicle it was when I left. I think when my time in Coronation Street was basically, I was there in the halcyon years. We went from 2 episodes to 5 episodes. We straddled the new century, and I think we did it very well.
Well, indeed. And listen, do you feel badly treated by the producers? Because you gave Coronation Street 2 decades of service, but I think you were pretty unhappy with some of the kind of storylines that you were given towards the end, including an affair with a teenage girl.
Well, yes, then they wanted to go a little bit further with that storyline. So, long story short, Mark, I took my coat and I stepped out into the world of food.
Well, that's it. What's next for you? The book is out. I'm going to give our viewers details of how to get it. But what are your plans for the future? I know you still do a bit of acting, so would you consider a return to Coronation Street or the small screen? There you go. I tell you what, that's what they call a pinter pause in acting, a pregnant pause. Fascinating stuff. OK, listen, Maria, we've already done the poll. Don't worry about that. Listen, folks, let me tell you that he is an amazing actor. I grew up watching Coronation Street, and I've got to tell you, I've been watching reruns of Coronation Street recently. Biggins, who was the lady that was the landlady of the Rover's Return? There was a queen-like stately figure.
Annie Walker.
Doris Speed.
Annie Walker.
Annie Walker.
Oh, Annie Walker.
Yes.
They don't make them like that anymore.
They certainly don't. And also his wife, Helen Worth, who's a good friend of mine, she's a most brilliant actress. And it's fantastic. It's good to see him, though, because you're right, he was good.
Well, definitely. What we're going to do, Biggins, we're going to get him back and do a proper interview very soon.
Very good.
I do feel that Coronation Street edges it over its rivals just for the quality of scripting, the humour and the acting.
Yeah, I think the humour is the most wonderful thing. It's lovely having, really funny comedians and comediennes in there, which really lift it, like real life.
It's always had that legacy, hasn't it? Hilda Ogden and Jack Duckworth and all the rest of it.
Enid Sharples.
Enid Sharples, absolute genius.
Working class people are funny.
Speaking of genius, let me tell you, in my take at 10, I think that Prince Andrew should remarry Sarah Ferguson. It will save his reputation. Find out why in 5 minutes' time.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry, here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. It's during the northern half of the UK that saw some of the better, sunnier breaks over the course of today, and into this evening as well, you've got the greater chance of seeing some clearer spells around the start of the night. Quite murky and cloudy across the southern half, particularly western Wales, southwest England, some hill fog, outbreaks of drizzle around. The cloud will tend to thicken in the north as we head throughout the second half of the night, some rain eventually arriving towards dawn, but for most of us it is going to be a very mild night. Temperatures really here what we'd normally expect during daytime at this point in February. Quite a dreary, damp start for Northern Ireland, Northern England and into Scotland as we head into Sunday with outbreaks of rain spreading their way in. A touch dry to the south, still some drizzle to watch out for, and we could see the odd sunnier break just develop perhaps for eastern Wales, eastern England, perhaps also eastern Scotland as well. But with some very blustery southwesterly winds coming in, and that is a mild direction of air, so it is going to see temperatures widely above average for the time of year. That rain in the north eventually stalls where this frontal system lies across Scotland. As it is pushing its way into some colder air ahead of it, we could see some snow over the hills in the far north, maybe even to some lower levels for Caithness and Orkney. But a rain warning is in force for western Scotland, where we could see some very persistent rainfall throughout Monday. Drizzle and cloud across the board, really, further to the south of that, but the rain will eventually arrive across southern districts as we head towards Tuesday and Wednesday. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Good evening, it's 10 o'clock on television, on radio and online in the United Kingdom and across the world. This is Mark Dolan Tonight. In my take at 10, it's time for Prince Andrew to remarry Sarah Ferguson. It will save his reputation, lift the nation and reignite a royal love story. Staying on the royals with the chilling news that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Harry and Meghan, are to make more Netflix TV shows. We'll get reaction from the Queen of US royal reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Plus, we'll find out what Prince Philip's nickname was for Meghan Markle. Plus, at tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction in the studio from tonight's top pundits, showbiz legend Christopher Biggins, top academic Dr. Lisa McKenzie and former Conservative MP and now farmer Neil Parish. A packed show, lots to get through. Prince Andrew in 2 minutes' time and why he should remarry the love of his life. First, the news with the reassuringly single Ray Addison.
Don't tell Mrs. Addison. I am Ray Addison in the GB newsroom, and we start with some breaking news this hour. The US and the UK have launched a series of strikes against 36 Houthi targets in Yemen. In a statement, it was announced that Britain and the US targeted buried weapons storage facilities, missile systems and launchers, air defence systems and radars. It's the second day of retaliatory operations following a deadly attack on American troops last weekend. On Friday, American forces hit more than 85 Iran-linked targets in Iraq and Syria, killing nearly 40 people, including civilians. Iraq has accused the US of putting the Middle East on the brink of an abyss. Stormont's first nationalist First Minister has pledged to work with unionists to build a better future for Northern Ireland. The historic appointment of Sinn Féin's Michelle O'Neill was confirmed as power sharing was restored 2 years after it collapsed. It follows an agreement between the DUP and the government over post-Brexit trade. The DUP's Emma Little-Pengelly has become the new Deputy FM, a role that carries equal legal power. Michelle O'Neill is promising to be inclusive and respectful to all.
We mark a moment of equality and a moment of progress, a new opportunity to work and to grow together. Confident in that wherever we come from, whatever our aspirations are, we can and we must build our future together. I'm really delighted to see every MLA back in this chamber today, and I welcome the fact that the DUP have decided to re-enter the democratic institutions and that the outcome of last year's Assembly election is now being respected.
Police hunting for a suspected chemical attacker have released new video of a home in Newcastle being searched. 2 containers with potential corrosives were recovered. Warnings can be seen on the labels and tests are ongoing to see if they held the substance used during an attack in South London. Abdul Ezedi hasn't been seen since. An image of him was taken at King's Cross Station on Wednesday night. 31-year-old mother remains in hospital with injuries believed to be life-changing. Her 2 young daughters were also hurt, but not as badly as first thought. Scotland Yard say that more than 10,000 pro-Palestine protesters marched through central London today. Members of the Stop the War Coalition and Palestine Solidarity Campaign called for an end to the Israel-Hamas conflict. One woman was arrested on suspicion of setting off a smoke bomb or flare. These protesters explained their demands.
People need to support Palestine and stop what's going on because day to day, every day, more and more horrific sights are seen.
The people are talking and governments need to listen, not only the UK. All governments need to listen because the people have spoken.
We are all humans. We all should feel each other. We shouldn't be, Gaza shouldn't be like that. People shouldn't be killed and slaughtered like that. So I'm praying for a better world, a peaceful world.
Well, for the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now, back to Mark.
My thanks to Ray Addison, who returns in an hour's time. Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight. Busy hour coming up with the chilling news that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Harry and Meghan, are to make more Netflix TV shows. We'll get reaction from the Queen of US royal reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Plus, we'll find out what Prince Philip's nickname was for Meghan Markle. Plus tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction in the studio from tonight's top pundits. This evening, true pedigree. We have legendary actor and TV personality Christopher Biggins, former Conservative MP and farmer Neil Parish, and top author and broadcaster Dr. Lisa Mackenzie. Plus, they'll be nominating their headline heroes and back page zeros of the day. A packed hour, those papers are on the way, but first, my take at 10. Who doesn't love a good wedding? The blushing bride, catching the bouquet, the best man's nervous speech with near-the-knuckle jokes, small children on the dance floor rocking out with their grandparents. Tying the knot is a wonderful family occasion to be treasured, which is why I think the disgraced Playboy prince, Prince Andrew, should do it for a second time with the same woman. Andrew and Sarah Ferguson is an unconventional love story, but a love story nonetheless. Back in the day, Andrew was known as Randy Andy, who cut a swashbuckling figure as a decorated military man and a jet-setting prince with all manner of models and famous actresses on his arm. But it was a divorced redhead with a reported penchant for toe-sucking who ultimately won his heart. But notwithstanding their sad divorce in 1996, the two of them have never spoken ill of each other and remain good friends, even cohabiting in the massive 30-bedroom Royal Lodge estate in Windsor. Sarah has gone on record as saying we are the most contented divorced couple in the world. And more tellingly, today's Telegraph report that in 2013, at a book festival, she said of Andrew, "He's still my handsome prince. He'll always be my handsome prince." Blimey, could someone pass me some tissues? Don't panic, I'm only planning to cry. Poor old Andrew has had plenty to cry about recently, with his appallingly ill-advised friendship with disgraced late billionaire paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. There was the disastrous Newsnight interview and his settling to the tune of millions out of court with his sex accuser Virginia Giuffre. But Prince Andrew protests his innocence, and it's doubtful that he will ever face criminal charges, which is why I believe it's time to move on. And how better to do that than remarrying Sarah Ferguson? I think it's a story that would touch the hearts of a nation, particularly given Sarah Ferguson's recent health woes, which have included breast cancer, which led to life-changing surgery, and a recent diagnosis of a skin melanoma, or skin cancer. She's been through a lot, Andrew has been through a lot, and I think they should formally reunite as they enter late middle age. They could even get married in the same Windsor chapel where their daughter usually got married during lockdown, although given that this place of worship is called All Saints, that might be pushing irony to its limits. Both Sarah and Andrew have made big mistakes in the past, one of the biggest being their original divorce. They should never have split up. It's time to right that wrong. If only Andrew had stayed with Ferguson, none of the horrors that have befallen him would have come to pass. These two have a special bond. How rare to have two royals that don't just love each other, but clearly like each other as well. How many people choose to live with their ex? It's time for Randy Andy to tie the knot. It'll be the best sequel since The Godfather 2 and would be a summer blockbuster for the royal family and the country. In sickness and in health, till death do us part. Neither of these two are angels, but their reunion will be a match made in heaven. Here's just hoping that on their wedding night, Andrew remembers how to suck toes. Can I tell you, there was once a little frisson with Mrs. Dolan's toes early in our relationship, but she had a touch of athlete's foot and I didn't go there. Your reaction, mark at gbnews.com. I'll get to your emails shortly. But first, my top pundits, legendary actor and TV personality Christopher Biggins, former Tory MP and now very successful farmer Neil Parish, and author and broadcaster Dr. Lisa Mackenzie. Neil Parish, this marriage would rescue Prince Andrew's reputation. It would be a lift for the nation. We could all do with a royal wedding. And it would be good news for Ferguson as well. She needs someone to support her at this time.
Well, Mark, you must be a great romantic, so I wish you well with your endeavours. I mean, I think them getting back together, I mean, I think they probably never really parted properly, and so therefore, yes, get them back, have a wedding. But what I don't want, I don't think anybody wants, would be a big state wedding. So if you think the whole idea is let's have a big state wedding, this will sort of reunite
That's
the country.
That's what I want. I want the pomp and ceremony.
No, I think they ought to quietly get married, and that would be great. And I think it would be very romantic and lovely. And I think, you know, you make a good point on Andrew. I think the fact that they divorced, it didn't make right what he did by any means, but it certainly didn't help. And I think bringing them back together, especially with Sarah now with the breast cancer and everything she's had, so all of that would be good stuff. But please, no great state wedding. I don't think the public in this country would share quite the enthusiasm you have for a state wedding. But please get them back together, yes.
Biggins, what do you think? How about Andrew to marry Ferguson? It's an unconventional love story, but a love story nonetheless.
Yeah, it is, but I think you're barking up the wrong tree here. I have to tell you that in the 80s, I did a TV series called Poldark, in which I played the sex-crazed vicar. And Winston Graham wrote a scene for me. I was having an affair with my wife's sister, Julie Dawn Cole, where I had to make love to her feet. And all week, Julie Dawn Cole went to Dr. Scholl's to have her feet done. And come the recording day at Pebble Mill, she was carried onto the set and placed in the bed. And on action, my tongue went between her two toes. And the head of drama at BBC said, no way could he put this out on a Saturday night after Dad's Army. So they cut it. So I think they should do a little bit more toe sucking, if you ask me.
Well, definitely. We're doomed, Captain Mannering. My goodness, the mind boggles. The bottom line is that I do think these two, Lisa Mackenzie, have great affection for each other. And I think there are plenty of examples of high-profile celebrities that have remarried. Producer Ben put together a list for me. Eminem remarried his ex. Richard Burton, Elizabeth Taylor remarried.
Many times.
Several, wasn't it? So I think it's a lovely romantic idea, Mackenzie, and I think they should go for it.
Well, I think they're probably the only two people that would like each other. I don't think there's anyone else that either could sort of would enjoy, put it that way. And I don't think that's going to redeem Prince Andrew. I think there's nothing left to redeem Prince Andrew. I think even like him marrying Mother Teresa wouldn't redeem Prince Andrew.
Not his type.
There's just nothing. I know.
He doesn't like veils.
No, and Dad.
Yeah, that's a snag as well. But the issue is that this is a man, I mean, I think he's a man of diabolical judgment, Lisa Mackenzie, but he has been convicted of no crime.
No, he hasn't been convicted of any crime. But, the fact that something has happened. He's hanging around with a known paedophile, going to his house, hanging out on islands, doing this playboy lifestyle. As Great Britain, and I know you love Great Britain, that's not what we should be known for, really, is it? He's someone like him. He shouldn't be somebody that, that presents as well. That's sort of old. That's in the past. The Great Britain of the future, I don't even think the monarchy has any role in it at all.
But royalty has never been completely good in the sex lines, have they? I mean, they've always had these raging affairs and love affairs with all sorts of people.
Completely dysfunctional people.
I would suggest that today's royal family are probably have far less affairs than you. Take all the Georges. I mean, when they said that when George IV and Earth descended, thank God the line of Georges ended. They had so many affairs. Remember the Parliament had to pay them to get a legitimate heir. They had dozens of illegitimate heirs, but they had no legitimate ones. And then eventually Victoria comes to the throne because they got so fed up with George III's sons, basically. And so, so I don't think we need to sort of moralise too much on where we are today.
I agree.
I just don't want to pay them. I don't want to pay for them. That's it.
That's fair enough. Listen, I can't unsee TV and film legend Christopher Biggins caressing an actress's feet.
Oh, I loved it. It was wonderful, I can tell you. It was
Family
a thrill.
show.
Yeah, I don't think we can put it out tonight, though.
That's not what I think. OK, well, look, folks, a fascinating debate. But next up, with the chilling
We've had
news
enough
that Duke and Duchess of Sussex, Harry and Meghan, are to make more Netflix TV shows, God help us. We'll get reaction from the Queen of US Royal reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Plus, we'll find out what Prince Philip's nickname was for Meghan Markle and why. Plus, tomorrow's papers on the way. And we've been asking, should Prince Andrew remarry Sarah Ferguson to save his reputation? The results are in. I shall reveal all next.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now, it's my view that Prince Andrew should marry Sarah Ferguson. I think it would rescue his reputation. It would be a lift for the country. And quite frankly, it would help the king as well. Well, I don't think you all agree. This from Paul. Hi, Mark. I could not care two shiny shites. I'm glad that Andrew has learnt the lesson and no longer complains or explains. Barbara says, Mark, for once I'm not with you on this. They could live together and be happy. I wouldn't grudge them that, but it's a waste of public money. Whose money are they living on? Neil is right. That's my pundit, Neil Parish. Lynn says, Mark, they most definitely deserve a happy ending, but I feel this is all a guise to cover up all the vile undercurrents. You're talking absolute BOLLOCKS, says David, not pulling his punches there. And Victor says, Mark, have you been smoking wacky backy? I usually love your show, but this time you've crossed the line and are talking rubbish. Well, look, folks, this show is all about diverse opinion. Let me know what yours is. Mark at gbnews.com. Back to my pundits shortly for tomorrow's papers. But now US news with the Queen of American showbiz, royal and political reporting, Kinsey Schofield. Kinsey, lovely to see you. Can I get a quick off-the-cuff reaction to my take at 10, my suggestion that Prince Andrew should remarry Sarah Ferguson?
You and I have talked about this before, and I do agree with you that I think it might change the direction of their public relations downward spiral. But they would have to do it very low-key, Mark. They could not do anything grander than what the King and Camilla did, Queen Camilla, when they were married. It was, you know, a very, very gentle, delicate, just kind of under the radar because they didn't want to upset anyone. And I think that Andrew and Fergie would have to do something similar.
Meanwhile, our worst nightmare is becoming a reality. More TV shows from Harry and Meghan on Netflix.
Yes. So we found out about this. There was an internal meeting at Netflix where a Netflix executive said that there was one movie on the horizon and 2 unscripted projects. We believe this movie is Meet Me at the Lake. It is a book adapted. Netflix purchased the rights to adapt this book by Carly Fortune for Harry and Meghan's Archewell. It's very similar to Harry and Meghan's story. These two spend the day in Toronto. If you'll remember, that's where Meghan Markle shot Suits. There is a death, a parental death in this book. And so, you know, obviously marketably pretty morbid, but, you know, an easy marketing situation for these two, Meet Me at the Lake. Additionally, we've heard rumors forever about Prince Harry's Africa documentary, which while I think it was a great idea a year or 2 ago, now that we've got this scandal, you know, brewing out of the African Parks charity that Harry is associated with within the leadership of, I mean, very serious scandal. How could he go and create a documentary about Africa and continue to not address that?
Perhaps I'm a little harsh on the couple in relation to these new Netflix projects. After all, they need to make a living.
Well, I mean, so far the only commercial success they've had was tearing down members of both of their families. So I don't think you're being too hard on them. These are two people that say they lead with love, and yet we haven't really seen much of that. Actions speak louder than words. I mean, just even this week, the anti-bullying campaign, yet Harry and Meghan's online fans are some of the nastiest and meanest I've ever encountered on this earth. So it seems like a lot of their stuff is pretty hypocritical. I think it's okay to be cynical when it comes to Harry and Meghan's content.
Indeed. Do you think their financial situation is stable? Is there any chance that this couple could eventually run out of money?
They are great at networking. They're really good schmoozers. They are always going to have people in their corner like Tyler Perry and Oprah Winfrey. You know, those are just two that we know helped them immediately during Megxit. They're always going to have people there to help them out because they have this, they've done a really good job with the victim narrative. And, you know, I do think that there are still some people out there that sympathize with them.
The couple has spoken out this week on the issue of child protection, something, of course, that we can all support. But is that their job to make these pronouncements?
It's not necessary, you know, it's not even about whether that's their job. It's, are they qualified? You know, Harry is a Nepo baby. And you just had me going, Mark. I didn't realize I was going to be so hot for this segment. Harry is a Nepo baby who is in the position he's in because of who his daddy is. And Meghan's in the position she's in because of who she married. And they are inserting themselves in a conversation, a political conversation. This happened after a Senate committee judiciary meeting. They're trying to be a part of a political conversation, and Harry is a foreign prince. We have no idea what his legal status is here in the United States. And, you know, what are their qualifications is my question. I don't think that they're qualified, and Americans don't want a man who called our First Amendment bonkers trying to rearrange our laws.
Let's talk about the late, great Queen Elizabeth II, who was very welcoming towards Meghan Markle when she entered the family, but apparently not so fond of her wedding dress.
That's right. The Queen, once commented to one of her very best friends, Lady Elizabeth Anson, that Meghan's Givenchy wedding gown was a little too white, considering the fact that she was a divorced woman. These allegations are coming from Ingrid Seward, very respected royal expert, and she said in the monarch's view it was inappropriate for a divorcee getting remarried in the church to look so flamboyantly virginal. And as you'll notice lately, Mark, Meghan maintains that style today. She's often seen in that really crisp white.
Most definitely. Let's talk about the Queen's former husband, the late great Prince Philip, who had a nickname for Meghan Markle.
Do I not? I miss Prince Philip so much.
Yes.
If I'm being honest, Prince Philip is one of my favorite characters, and I miss him so much. But again, these are Ingrid Seward. She said the Queen immediately smitten with Meghan Markle, but Prince Philip was never quite convinced. And he actually warned his wife to be cautious. He even savagely compared Markle to Wallis Simpson, the woman that led to the abdication of Edward VIII, secretly referring to Meghan as the DOW for Duchess of Wales. And if you'll recall, years ago, Omid Scobie once reported that a senior member of the royal family called Meghan Harry's showgirl, and I've always assumed that was Prince Philip too.
Another good or bad week for Donald Trump, finally, Kinsey. Is he still on his march to the White House?
I mean, as long as he can keep Taylor Swift's mouth shut, I think he's fine.
Tell us about that.
I'm just kidding. I mean, I think for the most part, they say that Donald Trump is concerned about Taylor's influence over the election. 18% of Americans that were polled said that they would vote for whoever Taylor told them to. But the reality is that Gen Z is 8% less likely to vote in the states because they are sick of the like lesser of two evils options. And Taylor has that younger demo. So Taylor's demo is dramatically older, like me. So they already are one party or the other, or they're much younger and they're just not motivated to vote. So Donald Trump's still very much in this race. But they do say that his team is worried about who Taylor might endorse this coming season election season, because she did endorse Biden during the last election season.
Well, indeed, of course, for those that don't know, I mean, she's one of the biggest stars in the world, pop superstar Taylor Swift. Maybe she should be president. If not, then definitely Kinsey Schofield. Kinsey, we'll see you in a week's time.
Thank you.
The fabulous Kinsey Schofield. Check out her brilliant podcast at To Die For Daily and her website of the same name. The papers are next.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debate, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, it's coming up to 10:30. Time for tomorrow's papers. Independent. Michelle O'Neill makes history as first nationalist leader of Northern Ireland and revealed a huge 50% spike in sex abuse cases against the police. The Observer. Labour draws up ultra-safe, bomb-proof manifesto. Social care reforms to come. Caution adopted in order to dampen Tory attacks. Also, patients tell of trauma at rehab linked to Scientology. The Eye Weekend, cut income tax to ease the cost of living crisis, voters urge the Chancellor Jeremy Hunt. Sunday Express, Britain's not equipped for all-out war. Shock report urges immediate action to bolster defences. Public fear world conflict could break out in the next 5 years. Minister's VIP lane scandal. Top Tory, I will help Sunak's wife's firm grow in the UK. A Tory minister on a trade mission to India said he'd be happy to help the tech firm owned by the family of Rishi Sunak's wife grow in the UK. Trade Minister Lord Johnson said he was keen to see a bigger Infosys presence in the UK and will be happy to do what he can to facilitate that. I think that's a misleading headline, and I think we'll discuss that with my guests very shortly. The Sunday Telegraph, hollowed out forces not ready to fight Russia. Lack of soldiers and arms must be addressed with a major shake-up, warns a landmark report. Sadiq Khan ploughs £150 million into secret road tax project. Church aiding asylum claims on a mass scale, say 2 former Home Secretaries, Priti Patel and Suella Braverman. And jail for activists who climb on war memorials. Last but not least, Daily Star Sunday. Paul Chuckle, killer ghost keeps flushing my bog. Star, it's no laughing matter. Chuckle brother Paul Elliott says an evil spirit is taking the pee by flushing a toilet in the dead of night at his converted 17th century barn. A serious case of, to me, to Lou. I tell you what, it's pretty strong from the Star. Speaking of strong, let's welcome my top pundits tonight. I'm delighted to have the highly loved and legendary actor and TV personality Christopher Biggins, former Conservative MP, loved by plenty of people, but perhaps not everyone. Loved by his cows.
Yeah, hopefully.
Farmer Neil Parish. He's had his hands on a pair of udders all afternoon, haven't you?
I keep having to explain to you the difference between beef cattle and dairy cattle.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I'm coming to visit the farm and you're going to show me the others.
Exactly.
I've seen pictures. Author and broadcaster Dr. Lisa McKenzie is with us as well. Folks, lots of stories to get our teeth into. And how about this story, Lisa? Labour draws up an ultra-safe, bomb-proof manifesto. Essentially, Keir Starmer has got to be careful now, watch his P's and Q's, not say anything silly or promise anything silly, and he'll be Prime Minister.
Yes, I think that's about it. I think his plan has been all along is to be pretty quiet, stay in the background, allow the Tories as much room as necessary. And the Tories, we've got to admit, has used that room to make an absolute mess of everything.
Yeah.
But I do think now Labour is in some danger because I don't think they're perhaps as safe as they think they are. Well, I think he realises this because he's going to have pressure from the left around Palestine. He's going to have pressure. There's a lot of I'm on Twitter #women not for Labour.
And is that because of his struggles to define what a biological woman is?
Yeah. So you've got that coming at him as well. You've got the red wall seats that won't necessarily just go straight back to Labour.
No, they might be worried about Brexit under Labour's hands.
Yeah. They also, up in the north as well, they want to hear about levelling up. Now, he's not going to talk about levelling up. They've already said they're going to keep bankers' bonuses. They're going to basically keep the Tory plan. That's what they're going to do. People in the north want to hear some money to level up. That's what they want to hear. If he doesn't do that, how's that going to play out in the red wall?
Biggins, you don't think that Keir Starmer should be complacent?
I certainly don't, because I think he's got a long way to go. I really do. I mean, I think the complacency is touching on being boring. And I don't think any of us want anything boring to happen in the future.
And it's an insult to voters if Starmer will not reveal his plans for high office.
Absolutely, because he knows there's going to be a big reaction to that. And I think he's playing it what he thinks safe.
Yeah.
And I don't think it is safe at all.
So when you say that, Christopher, are you suggesting that there could be a hung parliament or even the Tories could achieve a slim majority?
It's possible.
You're calling a potential upset, can't be ruled out.
Absolutely.
And why? How? In what manner could the Tories recover? How would that manifest itself at an election?
Well, I think that, it's all very well. We're downing everything that the Conservative Party are doing at the moment. And I think that often goes against it. Because I think then people think, well, actually, he's not doing too bad, Richie, I mean, he's trying to get things done. He works hard, I think, and he's good. I think he's good.
Well, look, I think that. I mean, I'm a self-confessed Rishi Spartan. I called for him to become Prime Minister in January of 2022, Neil Parish. And I've said he's an administrator, he's a number cruncher, he's a bank manager. And actually, that's what the country needs at the moment. Inflation is coming down, unemployment is low. And there was the statesmanship, the statescraft of the Windsor Framework, which has unlocked power sharing in Northern Ireland. All of these happened under Rishi Sunak. Perhaps all is not lost.
Yeah, I mean, I met Rishi when he came onto the select committee I was chairing in 2015. Immediately, you could see how bright he was. And so, therefore, I think sometimes, though, he almost sort of doesn't see the wood for the trees, basically. And I think sometimes he needs that vision. And if he had that vision to go for, along with his capabilities, then he has a real chance. Because the trouble with Keir Starmer is whenever there's any controversy, 28 billion on the green agenda. Well, of course, we can't afford it. So all of a sudden he changes. So is that going to be the Prime Minister he's going to make, you see? And so in the end it comes down to personalities in this country more and more with an election. And so will they think that all Keir Starmer will flip-flop? He can't do that when he's Prime Minister. He's got to stick to something, whether it's popular or not.
But do you think, because again, when you come to GB News, we meet lots of people from lots of different places, lots of political different places. And when I meet the grassroots Tories here and the Tory lords, they say one thing, Kemi Badenoch.
Yeah.
That's what they talk about. So I'm not sure that perhaps Labour might win, but not with the majority they think. And then the Tories might want Kemi Badenoch.
So are you suggesting that Badenoch would come before or after the election?
I don't know, but every time I come into this studio...
People speak about her admiringly.
Yes, very. Very, very admiringly, actually.
I mean, I think she's very good, but I think I've said this so many times before, Mark, the idea of changing the horse yet again in the race would just be absolutely crazy. And so, therefore, we will fight the election.
But this one's lame. This horse is lame. And you know what you do with lame horses, Neil?
It's not...
A bit like your cows.
It's not the horse that's lame, it's the stable that's lame.
By the way, he's always retiring...
It's all the other horses in the stable that are lame, not necessarily Rishi.
I've heard your...
It's the person party is not Rishi that's unpopular. And that's what he's got to turn round and get inflation down, get interest rates down, get taxes down. It might be a different game come the autumn when he will call the election, because it's not going to be called in the spring.
Well, I've heard
it's going to be called in the autumn.
I've heard you're always retiring lame heifers, but perhaps that's a lifestyle choice. Biggins, I'm inclined to defend Labour, actually, because they are streets ahead in the polls.
Yeah.
So they're doing something right.
Mean?
Well, the polls have been a test of public opinion, isn't it?
Yes, I know, but invariably they turn out to be wrong.
Other than the scale of these polls and the consistent support for Labour, I just wonder whether that's a worry for Sunak, and whether it suggests that what Labour are doing now is they are echoing the new Labour political revolution. It's this idea of fiscal prudence and an announcement from the Shadow Chancellor that they're going to allow unlimited pay bonuses in the City of London. That will attract some supporters on the right towards Labour.
Yeah, but will it go through?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you? Yeah, sorry. Do you actually think that's going to happen?
No.
And
that is pie in the sky. Because the left,
well, they've said Labour has said. Let me defend Keir Starmer. He has said that
the left.
His Shadow Chancellor has said they will not reinstate the pay cap, the cap on bonuses.
But what they'll do, Mark, as soon as they get into power, they'll say, "Oh, well, we've looked at the books; they're terrible.
Exactly.
It's been left in a horrendous state. So first of all, we'll tax the bankers. I mean, the left of the Labour Party are going to want some red meat. Probably not red meat in their case, but they'll want something. And so therefore,
I don't agree.
Will necessarily change. And I
don't agree at all.
I think Keir Starmer will be very cautious on his way in.
I don't agree.
But I think when he gets in, it's going to be totally.
Do you know why I don't? Do you know why I don't agree? Because I think Keir Starmer is not really. He's not Labour. He's actually a Tory. So I think he's going to throw the red wall working class under the bus for the city people, and he will put these bonuses. He will allow these bonuses because he will want those votes, and I think he'll throw the working class under the bus.
Yeah, but I think you're right about the working class vote. But you see, what you've got to remember is the makeup of the Labour Party in the House of Commons, and there are, you only have to see, you only have to see the debates that take place there to know, that there's still a lot of left-wing Labour MPs, and there'll probably be more after the next general election. Those are the ones he's got to worry about. You see, in the end, because when you actually try to run a House of Commons, when you are Prime Minister, I mean, you don't have to tell Rishi that when you've got, over there are my opponents, behind me are my enemies, as Churchill once said. I mean, that's how Rishi must feel sometimes. And of course, Keir Starmer could well face the same thing. I think getting in some ways, will be the easiest part of the job. I think when he gets there, I think it's going to be horrendous.
Well, there are worries for Labour, Lisa McKenzie, if Labour get a narrow majority, because that means that the hard left of the party, the Corbynites, people like John McDonnell and Diane Abbott, Rebecca Long-Bailey, potentially will hold the balance of power. They'll be the equivalent of the ERG.
I'm not sure, I really are. I mean, these sort of reds under the beds, I don't think they're on the bed. But are they, though? Do you know? I mean, listen, Jeremy Corbyn had that party in his hands and all those supporters for 5 years and lost it because he was incompetent.
But his legacy remains because the parliamentary party is now a lot less centre ground than it was in the
But don't you think,
years.
over the last, you look at it since October, Starmer has said to his MPs, you will not go on these Palestine marches. And guess what? They haven't gone.
But why are they all quiet? Because they want to win a general election.
Yeah.
Once they've won a general election, it's going to be totally different. So you're going to see these left-wing MPs going to start squeeze Keir Starmer.
All right, Lisa, allow me to come out of my comfort zone and continue to defend Keir Starmer. The unlimited
I know
bonuses,
what is going on.
No cap on bonuses. Now, the Shadow Chancellor has said that the reason she's doing that is because she wants the financial services sector to grow.
Yeah.
And if it grows, it produces national income, which can then go to deprived communities.
Yes.
Surely that's a good thing.
Well, that's what Tony Blair said, didn't they, when they deregulated the whole market. And do you remember 2008?
Yes.
Do you remember what happened in 2008?
But I think bankers' bonuses is different to that.
Well,
I mean, that's rewarding success, isn't it?
But what happened with the bankers?
But it was also rewarding risk.
Yes.
And that's what we've got to be careful of.
Yeah.
And if you take it back to the case where you make risky investments and then that's how you're getting your bonus.
One of the reasons...
That's what
one of the reasons we've got these potholes...
So it's not all easy.
Let's take this back to potholes. One of the reasons we've got these potholes is because we've had austerity since 2008, and it was the bankers and the risks that they were prepared to take without any consequence.
Okay,
Listen,
well, listen,
I'm so
Higgins.
anti-coalition. I mean, I think it's a horrible thing. The worst thing ever. But what I do want is for parties to come together and sort out the absolute shit that we're in at the moment.
Definitely.
There you go.
And with the health service, you've got to bring the parties together, because otherwise it's just a political football that's kicked from one side to the other all the time.
And the verbal abuse everybody gets.
Okay.
Exactly.
Well, I tell you something. Back to me, Alistair. Let me tell you that Biggins has turned the air blue. Which means it's time for a break and some smelling salts. But listen, he shoots from the hip, that young man, and he won't be cancelled, not on my watch. Lots more to come. Tomorrow's papers, more front pages, and my pundits nominate their headline heroes and back page zeros, and more swearing from Biggins.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests, and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Big news, big debate, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affects us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, folks, look, you can hear my lively panel. They'll be reacting to more front pages, including this from the Mail on Sunday. Let's take a look. Hot off the press. Quite a sparkling headline. BBC editor is paid to help 15 Somalian criminals to stay in the UK. A BBC editor was hired as an expert witness to help at least 15 Somalian criminals fight deportation, including a vile offender who sexually attacked a deaf teenage girl. Important reporting there from the Mail on Sunday, and a devastating story. Royal exclusive, why the Queen thought Diana should have chosen Andrew.
Oh, there you are. There's the answer to your question.
Yeah, that would fix everything, wouldn't it?
It certainly would.
Sunday,
poor woman.
she'd still be with us. You'd have no Virginia Giuffre.
Didn't she suffer enough?
There you go. And then Charles and Fergie, how about that for a combo?
Didn't they?
You mustn't be so rude about our king. The Sunday Times, we will hold Iran to account, vows Lord Cameron, the Foreign Secretary. Sinn Féin marches into the history books, and fugitive may have gang links. This is, of course, the alleged Alkali attacker who is on the run at the moment, having severely injured a mother, 2 daughters and 9 others. I've said an Alkali attacker because Edwina Curry put me right that it wasn't acid.
She put me right.
Alkali.
Still burns.
But it burns the face quite terribly. Yeah. A chemist I'm not, even though I'm wearing a chemist's white coat. I'll examine you later, Christopher.
Thank you, darling.
All right. Now, listen, folks, let's get reaction to all of these stories from my top pundits this evening. And I wanted to have a look at a couple of the other stories that caught my eye. Britain is not equipped for all-out war. There's a surprise, Christopher. You reap what you sow. We're now vulnerable, aren't we?
We are extremely vulnerable. It's all very well the Americans miles and miles away sending in forces, but we're just round the corner.
Correct.
And we were talking earlier about conscription. Yeah. I mean, I said, did we think that there would be conscription? You said no.
No, because the point I made was that let's have the missiles on our ships. Let's have planes on our aircraft carriers. Yes. Let's actually... An army, a war today is fought with good equipment. Yes, you need personnel, but you need equipment. And this is what we're short of. And before we start talking about conscript, where on earth that came from, I shall never know, because we have got to make sure that the forces we've got, and we've got some good ships, we've got some good planes, but we haven't got enough of them.
And we've also invested...
And send more ships out to the Middle East, and you haven't got missiles on them. For goodness sake.
It's not great. And also, we've invested badly in some cases, haven't we? Those aircraft carriers ordered by Gordon Brown.
Yes.
Which have been mothballed for a long time?
I think it's not just Gordon Brown. I think there's been a problem with procurement throughout the military. It never hits budget. It's always wildly over. We've got some really good defence manufacturers in this country that we haven't used enough, and we've always bought outside this country, not always, too much. And then when you need them repaired and serviced, I have one in my own constituency, a company called Supercat, which built all these vehicles to stop people being blown up in the war zones. We just don't use our own people enough, and we just don't equip ourselves right. And so it's not about the numbers; it's very much about having the right equipment. Because in Ukraine, it's being shown that if you've got the right equipment, it's amazing what you can do with it.
Well, there is a difference between us and the Ukraine. The Ukraine had tanks coming down their streets, so the people said, we need to protect our country, and they didn't need to be conscripted. They wanted to fight. Here, these are about wars that are somewhere else, that are not connected to us. And as I've said it, over my dead body will my son be sent anywhere by these people. If David Cameron's kids aren't on the front line, and any of the other politicians that will make these decisions, if their kids aren't on the front line, mine's not going.
Hard to argue with that. And how many people would step up and defend this country, even if it were under attack?
I think
I have my doubts.
Many more would.
So do I.
When that happens.
Well, I hope you're right.
In the meantime, the only thing when I would disagree with you is that when, the war in Ukraine, we can't ignore, because if Russia succeeds in the Ukraine, is it Poland next? And that's what happens with all of this. And then it gradually moves.
We have skin in the game.
He's got to be stopped.
We have skin in the game. Well, look, folks, let's now get to our nominations for Headline Hero of the Day and Backpage Zero. Who's your hero today, Christopher?
The Scottish monkey.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
I've been riveted to it. I mean, he's gorgeous. And, in people's backyards, enchanting children and escaping and being found. And I think he was happy to get back, because I think he was hungry.
Yes, he was lured by Yorkshire pudding.
Yes, he was. That's right. I know.
Who hasn't been?
The cheeky monkey is back in captivity, unlike Nicola Sturgeon, who remains at large.
And well.
And well.
That's right.
There you go. How about you, your headline hero, Neil?
My headline hero is Mike Freer, the MP, who, you know, rightly or wrongly stuck to his guns over Israel, then had his office, you know, burnt. You know, at the end of the day, we've got, as MPs, whatever views you take, as long as you hold them honourably, for goodness sake, let them get on with it and not have all this fear. And I think there is a real problem here.
Threats to MPs and their safety is a direct assault on our democracy, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, I had one or two threats. You know, I didn't take them probably as seriously as I should have done. But of course, don't forget, I shared an office. I have an office right next door to David Amos. That was a huge shock to all of us.
Were you in the house when it happened?
Yeah, because it could have happened to anybody. Because you've got a whole group of people waiting to see you. You know, I mean, sometimes I used to have people come in with sort of big cases and things, and you did wonder what might be in them. And so, you know, even I, though I had a very rural constituency, on the whole, wasn't too much trouble. You never quite knew where
you never knew. Very vulnerable. It's a disgrace. It's a disgrace.
Democracy, I'd like to walk out in the street, like farmers' markets, whatever it was. I'd like to go there
Direct
and do
access.
it all. And I did. But you see, eventually we won't be able to. And that'll be really wrong.
That's a big problem. Really briefly, a few seconds now. Your headline hero, Lisa, and why?
Mine is the families who from the Nottingham attack. The families who this week has been told that the murderer is actually just a manslaughterer, and it was diminished responsibility. And they've spoken out very bravely and said, we're not accepting this.
No, quite right.
OK, well, look, thanks to my fantastic pundits tonight. Really enjoyed your company. Christopher Biggins, Neil Parish and Lisa Mackenzie. Please come back soon. Tomorrow night, Anne Widdecombe, Annunziata Rees-Mogg, Nigel Nelson and Lord Culvier Ranger. A very busy show to come. Big Opinion, Take a 10 and much more. Next up, it's Headliners. See you tomorrow at 9.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. During the northern half of the UK that saw some of the better, sunnier breaks over the course of today, and into this evening as well, you've got the greater chance of seeing some clearer spells around to start off the night. Quite murky and cloudy across the southern half, particularly western Wales, southwest England, some hill fog, outbreaks of drizzle around. The cloud will tend to thicken in the north as we head throughout the second half of the night, some rain eventually arriving towards dawn. But for most of us, it is going to be a very mild night. Temperatures really here what we'd normally expect during daytime at this point in February. Quite a dreary, damp start for Northern Ireland, Northern England and into Scotland as we head into Sunday with outbreaks of rain spreading their way in. A touch dry to the south, still some drizzle to watch out for, and we could see the odd sunnier break just develop perhaps for eastern Wales, eastern England, perhaps also eastern Scotland as well. But with some very blustery southwesterly winds coming in, and that is a mild direction of air, so it is going to see temperatures widely above average for the time of year. That rain in the north eventually stalls where this frontal system lies across Scotland. As it is pushing its way into some colder air ahead of it, we could see some snow over the hills in the far north, maybe even to some lower levels for Caithness and Orkney. But a rain warning is in force for western Scotland, where we could see some very persistent